Our guest tonight is former WCW, WWE, TNA writer Vince Russo. How you doing, man?
All right, man. How are you?
I can't complain. I told you we got you on the line, my friend. Recently, I can't believe that joke didn't land a second time. Recently, you closed your Pyro and Ballyhoo website and started The Brand on the Realm Network. You also write for several other websites as well, talking about wrestling, doing all kinds of things. While you've been keeping busy, TNA did not bring you back when you offered your services for free, as you stated, and there were rumors that you denied that Lucha Underground was not interested in bringing you in either. Do you feel you still have something to add to the wrestling business, or are you content being on the outside looking in now?
Well, that's a good question, and it's really like a double-edged sword, and I'll tell you why. Because I am content, doing my thing on the Realm Network. There's no doubt about that. Listen, Vince Russo not having any chains and not having any rules and nobody telling me what to do is just, it's beyond a freeing experience. It's incredible. However, what I do for a living, at VinceRussoBrand.com depends on wrestling. And, so therefore, I make a living off of professional wrestling. So when I watch WWE and when I watch TNA on a weekly basis, and I literally, just see how subpar the television shows have become. I see the drastic decrease in ratings. That concerns me because without wrestling, there may not be a Vince Russo. So, there is no doubt in my mind, I would love to help those companies. I know I can help the companies. I know what they're doing wrong. But, when you're at the point of, offering your services free of charge and it's, thanks but no thanks, there's not too much you can do. So, so the answer to that question is for my own longevity, the wrestling business needs to prosper, and I'm willing to help make it prosper. If they're not interested, that's up to them. But, like I said, what I'm more concerned about is my future.
Mike Chiari?
Yeah, well, from a fan's perspective, it kind of feels like TNA is in shambles at the moment. I mean, Lucha Underground, Ring of Honor, NXT, they're all hotter brands right now. It seems like half the roster's contracts are up for TNA. The live events are few and far between. So from that perspective, why do you feel like you would be capable of reversing that downward spiral? And also, what are some of the fundamental changes that you would make that you think could make TNA a successful promotion again?
Yeah, your name's Mike, right?
Yes.
Mike, it's real simple. And Mike, understand, like everything that I say is just my opinion. I want to make that clear. But in my opinion, listen, man, I watch TNA, and it's just wrestling 101. They're in the wrestling bubble week in, week out. They're telling wrestling stories, and a perfect example of that is, you have a 13-year story of Jeff Jarrett and Dixie Carter and TNA. 13 years, an ongoing story. And the way they introduce that story back to TV is through a King of the Mountain wrestling match. I mean, you don't have to be Vince Russo to see that that's ridiculous. That's, bad fake wrestling. They didn't come up with any creative whatsoever. And if that story was presented in the correct fashion and in the right way, almost as a shoot with the history and the reality of you had that of that story, I mean, I trust you. Trust me, it would have been a lot more compelling than just showing up on the show to announce that I'm going to be in a wrestling match.
BG?
It's been mentioned in interviews that WWE has a team of more than 20 writers, but in the past you've mentioned how it was mostly you and Ed Ferreira working with Vince McMahon during the Attitude Era, which is praised for its storylines. And we joke how it seems odd that more than 20 writers can't seem to come up with compelling storylines or storylines with continuity. Do you think that's too many people working on creative? And what do you think the perfect balance would be, considering the team has to write for at least 6 or 7 hours of TV per week?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, listen, you got to look at it this way. They have a week to write a television show. And when there are 20 people involved in the writing of that show, you are going to spend a lot of time running into each other. I mean, there's no question about it. And what happens is, while you're running into each other for a good majority of the week, you get to crunch time, and all of a sudden it's Saturday and Sunday, and we don't have a complete show yet, and we'll just finish it when we get to TV. That's what you're seeing. And, I'll just go back to, listen, Ferrara and Russo worked, period, end of story. Two guys that wrote the show and, brought the show to Vince and pitched the show to Vince. It's a proven, it's proven ingredients. It's a proven formula. And I'm not saying Russo Ferrara to go back to WWE, but what I'm saying is, replace Russo and Ferrara with two other guys, make it simple, same vision, and you'll have a much better product. There's no way that could be a compelling and intriguing show with that many writers involved in the writing of it.
It's true. Listen, one of the segments we have on the show each week is called Dirt Sheet Busters, where we go through the lies of guys like Dave Meltzer and the other so-called reporters on the internet. We don't report lies, so I can throw that stone. As someone who has been a topic of conversation for Meltzer for years, what are your thoughts on him, the dirt sheets in general, and what do you say to the people who compare you to Meltzer?
Oh, please don't. Absolutely not. And I don't even know. I don't even know how anybody in their wildest dreams can make that comparison. Because first and foremost, I've been there and done that, and I've been there and done that for 20 years. Okay, Meltzer's never been there. Meltzer's never done that. Period. End of story. Covering wrestling and being a part of the business for 20 years are two completely things. But aside from that, I'm not a rumor monger. I'm not on the phone all day long trying to get dirt. I don't say things for sensational headlines that will affect people's lives. That's not me. Vince Russo is an entertainer through and through. I say it's an entertainer. I say I'm an entertainer. Everything that comes out of my mouth is to entertain you. I don't talk about rumors and hearsay and sources. That's not my bag. My job is to entertain you through my podcast, just like I did through my writing.
Mike Chiari?
Yeah, well, I'm sure that most people who have been in your position as a creative writer, they've done a lot of things that they're very proud of, but have also probably had some regrets along the way. So I was wondering for you, whether it's a storyline related thing or maybe interpersonal relationships or whatever it might be, what is your biggest regret, first from your time in WWF and then also from your time in WCW?
Well, I'll say that my regret in the wrestling business, because it doesn't matter where I was. You can put it under the umbrella in the wrestling business. My biggest regret, as I stand here now, I'm on the outside looking in. I'm 54 years old, and my biggest regret is that whatever company I work for, I made that my number one priority. And what that means is, I put God behind it. I put my family behind it. I put my wife behind it. I put my kids behind it. When I was working for those companies, that was my number one priority. And now when I sit back and I see how thankless those individuals are that I gave my life to, and those individuals that I put my family before, I'm absolutely ashamed of myself. Shame on me. I should have never done that. I should have known better. It was never about the money. It was my pride It was just wanting to be the best that I could possibly be. I'm a goal-driven guy. And, I made that my priority. I made Vince McMahon my priority. I made Dixie Carter my priority. My time that I was at WCW, that was my priority. And looking back now, that was a huge, huge, huge mistake that I can never take back.
BG?
You're credited with a lot of the success and failures from the Attitude Era across both WWE and WCW. But one thing that we've consistently praised you for was the handling of the mid-card wrestlers. And during the Attitude Era, whether it was good or bad, it always seemed everybody had an angle or a character to work with. Why was it so important to you to make sure everybody had something to do? And why do you think that's missing from today's product, given how many talented wrestlers there are in WWE?
Well, number one is, it was real easy. Well, and I give Jim Ross credit for this all the time. I say it every interview, and I'll say it till the day I die. Jim Ross put together the talent roster at the WWE. Once that talent roster was assembled, JR gave that roster to me and Ed Ferrara, and he basically said, guys, this is the team. At that point, if you're good enough to make the WWE roster and you're on that team, then it is up to us as the writers to give you a story, to give you a character, to give you a storyline, to put you on television every week with a purpose. Once you've made the roster, you're a pro. So at that time, our job is to help get you over, assist in getting you over, through character, through stories, through dialogue, etc. So that's why, whether you were Steve Austin or D'Lo Brown or Luna Vachon, it didn't matter to us. You were on the team, so our job was to help get you over. And during that time, all Vince McMahon ever cared about was, what was Austin doing? What was The Rock doing? That's all he cared about. So I guarantee you that's the same mentality today. What's Cena doing? It's the same mentality today, and there's nobody standing up for those guys, in the middle of the card that are going out there every single week with no purpose. There's just nobody putting the time and attention on these guys and girls that they've earned. They're on the roster because they're the best in the world. And unfortunately, nobody's giving them any good material.
Oh, in one of your columns, I think it was WrestleZone in May, you said the headline was, "Wrestling will die if it doesn't grow," right? Saying that wrestling has stayed the same for the last 15 years. Despite this, the WWE has changed to a PG format, agree or disagree. But Ring of Honor and many other indie promotions have given fans something different, and even Lucha Underground is really offering something completely off the map. Do you view this as the growth the business needs, or do you truly believe that we're going to see wrestling die?
I think as we speak, if people can't see now that wrestling right now is a niche market, period. End of story. Look at your numbers. Less than 5 years ago, TNA was doing 2 million people. They're doing a quarter of that now. You can look at the 15-year decline of the WWE. Basically, the people watching wrestling in 2015 are wrestling fans that are always going to watch wrestling. The problem is they've lost the casual television viewers. And those were the 5 million people that are now gone. So wrestling has already become a niche market. And like I said, anybody can study the numbers and look at the numbers and see where this business once was and where it is today. And I want to say this. I publicly want to say this. I want to totally separate Lucha Underground from that, because Lucha Underground is not a wrestling company. They're a television show. and they treat the product like a television show. They produce it like a television show. They treat the wrestlers like television stars. So, in my opinion, Lucha is in a is in a category all by itself because Lucha is not a wrestling company; they're a television company.
Mike Chiari?
Yeah, one of the biggest narratives with regard to you and your success in WWF, it's thrown around all the time, whether it's true or not, is that it only happened because Vince McMahon acted as a filter. And then when that filter wasn't present in WCW, things didn't necessarily go as well. So I was wondering, firstly, do you think that's a fair criticism? And if not, what do you believe are the primary reasons for the lack of success in WCW in comparison to WWF?
But there wasn't a lack of success. And again, listen, man, I'm a numbers guy. People's opinions and what you think and what I think, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the numbers. Period. End of story. So to address your question, when Ed Ferrara and I went to WCW, and the first 3 months of that company, we were running the show, and we had our plan in place, and we were doing what we wanted to do. Anybody can look it up. The numbers are there. The ratings went up. It wasn't until 3 months in, when I went home because of politics, that the ratings went right back down to the point they were before Ed and I even got hired. That's number one. As far as Vince McMahon being this great filter, well, the whole premise of that is just ridiculous, because the fact of the matter is he's there now. So you got the same guy there now that was there for the Attitude Era, and if Vince Russo, had no impact whatsoever, and Vince McMahon had to filter him, well, Vince McMahon's still there. So with Vince McMahon there running the show, how did we go from an 8.2 rating to 3.5 million people? I mean, again, from a factual basis, somebody has to explain that to me, because the same guy's still running the show.
PG?
When you left WWE for WCW in 1999, it seemed that a lot of the top storylines that you were working on were coming to a close. The Corporation and Ministry of Darkness were essentially no more, and Stone Cold Steve Austin was battling injury. And I'm sure when you left, you still followed what they were doing. I'm curious what your thoughts are. What your thoughts are on some of their top storylines at the end of 1999. More specifically, Stone Cold getting ran over by a car, and Triple H interrupting Stephanie McMahon and Tess' wedding, since those two segments have become two of the most iconic.
Well, I'll be honest with you. The day I left WWE, I never watched another show. So I did not follow what they were, doing. I do know. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, I didn't even know about Austin getting hit by a car. I did know about the Stephanie and the Triple H wedding thing, and I like that angle. I mean, I put that over. But like the Austin in the car, I never saw that. I'm not even aware of that. But once I went to WCW, we were focused on WCW. I did not watch a Raw show while I was working for WCW.
Mike Chiari?
Yeah, well, someone who you've been very vocal about lately is Chyna, and she's seemingly been trying to get back in WWE's good graces. And you sent out what turned out to be a pretty controversial tweet, wondering why WWE doesn't champion Chyna like it did Connor the Crusher. So firstly, if you could explain what you meant by that tweet, and also touch on why you feel it's so important for Chyna to get back involved with WWE or just wrestling in general.
I don't think it's important at all for Chyna to get back involved with WWE or in wrestling in general. I've never said that. I don't think that's important at all. Any comment I've ever made about Chyna is my concern for her well-being as a person. Those were the comments I made. Whether she ever works for the WWE again, ever goes into the Hall of Fame, ever wrestles again, I mean, that is absolutely of no concern to me. That is China's business. I'm more concerned about her health, her mental state of mind, and a tragedy happening. That's what I'm concerned about. And that was the comment about Connor. Listen, man, China needs help, and if you have the opportunity to help China, reach out and help her. And I don't think. Listen, I know the Connor story. I saw the Hall of Fame, and it's a beautiful, beautiful story. I commend them for what they're doing. I just don't agree with, picking and choosing who you're going to help and who you're not going to help. So, in other words, if they have the money and the resources to help a China who needs the help on a completely different level, then why not help her? That was basically all I was saying.
BG?
It seems you've always written for stables, from DX and the Corporation in WWE all the way to SEX and TNA. And as a huge fan of factions and wrestling myself, what is it about them that draws you in when you're writing?
Wait, what was the last part of the question?
What is it about factions that draws you in when you're writing storylines?
To me, just getting the guys on TV. Here's a perfect example. When's the last time we saw Sandow on TV? Who's a great talent, who they spent so many months building up with the Miz angle, so many months. The guy got himself so over with the crowd. Like, where is he? He's completely disappeared. So basically, one of my goals was to always make sure, it goes back to the roster. Everybody was on TV. Everybody was represented. And if you had to form a faction to get everybody involved, then that's what you did. So, that was really my motivation behind that, to just find roles for everybody. I mean, you could do you could do a faction in the WWE right now with all the people who literally their careers they're killing. With lack of creative, lack of storyline, lack of character, lack of television time. There are so many people right now that fall under that category that you could put them together as a shoot and create a faction and get them over and get them on television. But nobody's thinking about that. I mean, they're just really looking at, okay, what's the A story?
Final round of questions, Mike Chiari?
Yeah, the inmates running the asylum is what a lot of people point to when it comes to the downfall of WCW. And fans got to kind of see that firsthand, I think, in the form of Bash at the Beach 2000 with you and Hulk Hogan. How would you characterize your behind-the-scenes relationship with Hogan, both in WCW and in TNA? And also, what are your impressions of him now that your days working together are over?
Well, number one, we really didn't have a relationship at WCW because people seem to forget this, bro. They want to pin everything that happened at WCW on me. But what they really fail to forget is the reality of it is I only worked there for 9 months. So I didn't even have a relationship with Hulk Hogan at WCW, to be honest with you. I was very grateful that when he came to TNA, we were able to settle any differences that might have been there, and I was able to have a relationship, with him. And I'm very grateful, and I'm very, very thankful for that. As far as his spot now, in the WWE, man, I'm thrilled for the guy. Listen, I don't know where the wrestling business would be without Hulk Hogan. I mean, I honestly don't. So for him to be in the spot, that he's in as more or less an ambassador of WWE, I think he deserves to be in that spot. I'm happy for the guy. I mean, I'm absolutely thrilled for the guy.
BG, final question?
Triple H has been the center of dirt sheet reports for more than 13 years, with the focus being on him burying other wrestlers or securing his spot in the company because of his relationships with Stephanie and Vince McMahon. And before you left WWE in 1999, though, Triple H had already won the WWF Championship and was becoming a staple in the main event scene. Do you recall what your stance was on Triple H, or what the company's stance on him was before you left? And did you ever see or hear anything about what the dirt sheets have been reported in recent years?
No, I never have. But I will say this: I know when Triple H was breaking into the WWE, and when that situation went down in Madison Square Garden, where Triple H wound up being the scapegoat. I can tell you, listen, I'm not going to sit here and put over the things that I did for Triple H early on, but I will say there was nobody in his corner, more than me. When that character was first being developed, there was nobody developing that character more than me. I used to write every single one of his promos. I only had one instance in working with him where he really disappointed me, and he blatantly did not want to do a job for D'Lo Brown, and I really had an issue with that. But I never read any of the stuff. I never followed any of the stuff. But I was very, very, very disappointed when I almost went back to the WWE in 2002. And, I found out, more or less that Triple H wasn't necessarily in my corner after all I did for him. Now, you fast forward, 12 years later, and you see the situation that he's in and the situation that his wife, Stephanie, is in. And, obviously now it makes all the sense in the world. If you eventually want the power, well, then you definitely want to keep a guy like Vince Russo away, who from a creative standpoint is going to produce better content and better television than you can, simply because he's a writer, and he went to school for a writer to be a writer, and he knows the art of writing. So, when that happened in 2002, and I more or less learned that he was working behind the scenes to keep me out of the WWE, well, I'd be lying to tell you that my opinion of him did not change.
Okay, the honesty, that's what we came to you for, Vince Russo. A huge thanks to Vince Russo for coming on the show. Guys, the brand on the Realm Network. Tell the fans where they can support you, Vince.
Yeah, please. The brand Realm Network, it's VinceRussoBrand.com. I'm on there podcasting every single day, and we do video podcasts. And I bring on 3 different guests every single week. So, it's almost like a 24/7 podcast channel. And, that's where I am. That's what I'm doing. And if you want to follow me, it's VinceRussoBrand.com.
Fantastic. Another big thanks, Vince. Good luck moving forward, man.
Thank you very much, guys. I enjoyed it.